Hi, I'm Daniel Fisher here at Sweetwater, and today we're going to look at the Waldorf Iridium Synthesizer. So what is the Waldorf Iridium? It's basically a desktop version of the Waldorf quantum synthesizer. And the similarities are so great that you can take patches from the Iridium and play them in the quantum. You can take patches from the quantum, play them in the Iridium. Major differences, though, is that the quantum also has analog filters and digital filters. This only has digital filters. And the quantum has 8 voices, while the Iridium has 16 voices. And that's important because it's bitimbral, which means it can do 2 layers at once. Each layer can be on a different MIDI channel, or you can do a split or a layer. And each of those layers has 3 oscillators. And each of those oscillators can be one of 5 engine types. There's wavetable, there's waveform, there's particle, there's resonator, and there's kernels. And kernels is kind of a form of FM, but you can choose any waveform to be your operator and your modulator. There's a mix section that lets you mix the oscillators as well as choose the routing, and it's very flexible about which oscillators are going to which filters. You have 3 filters, and we'll talk about that next, and also 5 effects. And each of those filters come with lots of choices. Like on the state variable filter, I could choose between a 12 dB roll-off, either clean, saturated, or dirty, 24 dB per octave. I can do high pass and band pass, all with those different choices. So a lot of power with that times 2. And then there is the digital former filter, and you can choose many different types of that. It can be a drive, it can be a gain, comb filters, bit crushers, ring mod, plus a lot of the other filters already named. And those 3 filters offer you a ton of power because in the routing, you can choose which oscillators are going to which filters and how you're routing it. You can even have ring mod on 2 of the oscillators. And for modulation, there are 6 LFOs, 6 envelopes, plus a complex modulator that's sort of a cross between an LFO and an envelope that you can customize to a great extent. And all of this can be used in a modulation matrix with 40 slots. So there's just tons of modulation power. In fact, you can even bring in 4 separate control voltage signals from your URAC or other sources, and they can be used as modulation sources as well. And then everything goes into the effects section. You've got 5 slots. Each one has a nice list of things it can be: phaser, chorus, flanger, delay, reverb, EQ, driver, compressor. You can have all 5 of those going at once. And they're in stereo. In fact, everything's in stereo. All of your filters are true stereo, so you're not losing your stereo-ness when you do panning and other effects. So when you first hear about all these parameters, you might be thinking, man, this is a really complex synthesizer. And it is, no doubt. But one of their slogans is that this is complex but not complicated. How is that possible? Well, it's because of how well they did the screen and the knobs alongside of it, to where no matter what mode you're in, whether it's LFO or oscillators or filters, as soon as you go to that mode, these 6 knobs on the side are doing the 6 main parameters for that page. And it's just very easy to make a choice, and it's just very easy to see what you're doing. And it's convenient in that if there are parameters up here that are matched down here, both work. So you might be able to change something down here, or if you're up here, you might want to change it from there. The workflow on this is really intelligent, and that's what makes this thing complex but not complicated. All right, so I'm going to start with an INIT preset. So I go to load, and instead of choosing from one of these thousands of presets, I'm going to hit INIT. And now I'm going to go to these buttons across the top, and I'm going to just start from the left, which is LFOs. So you can see I have 6 LFOs. I'm going to make LFO1's shape be triangle. And now I have to assign it to something. So it's not doing anything yet. So I'm going to add an assignment. So it's saying LFO1 going to, and now I have a destination knob, and I'm going to choose oscillator 1 pitch. So I play a key. You still don't hear it. That's because now I need to do an amount, and you can do amounts positive or negative. And I can change its speed. And I'll tell you, I love slow LFOs. I love LFOs and envelopes that let things happen over minutes. And this one, the speed goes as slow as 240 seconds per cycle, which is amazing. And then it goes all the way up to 100 hertz. So we're getting into audio territory. So it's really powerful. So here it is again. And then I could choose a controller to control that LFO and how much control amount that has. And then I can build a list, and so I can just keep adding more things that this LFO1 does. And I can do that times 6. So clearly stupid powerful. So now I'm going to go to Oscillator 1. And as I mentioned before, you can have one of 5 engine types: wavetable, waveform, particle, resonator, or kernels. But we're going to start with wavetable. And so now you can sweep through the choices of wavetables. And when you've picked one, now you can sweep a position through that wavetable. And like everything in this machine, if you hear me moving it via knob, it can be a destination for any controller, for LFO or envelope or velocity or mod wheel or aftertouch or whatever. So anytime you hear me moving something, always remember that you can move that with any type of modulation source. So now I'm going to sweep spectrum. And this is probably a good time to show you how each of the knobs can be set to either have a normal, fine, or super fine resolution. So here's sweeping spectrum normal. But if I want a finer resolution, I simply touch that parameter and I can choose fine. Now watch. And now let's say I want to find something exactly within there. I can go to superfine. And each of these knobs are also push buttons, which sometimes let you lock in a value or switch between options. In this case, it's switching between the 3 levels of resolution. So I can switch between normal, fine, or superfine simply by touching them. On the control page, we have basic choices for semitones. So it's 2 octaves up, 2 octaves down. Then we have fine tuning. And again, pushing the button or touching the screen there lets me do fine controls or super fine controls. So very powerful there. Then I have pitch key tracking, so I can either have it play scales or I can have the notes not move or anything. I can have it be upside down. And then I've got Oscillator 1 volume, which is replicated in the Oscillator mix page. I can also do Oscillator pan, and I can even change the destination from here. So from this page, I'm actually doing things that I would normally do in other sections of this synth. So like I said before, everything is duplicated or triplicated in a way that helps your workflow. And if I'm in the waveform engine, I get to choose between standard geometric shapes like sawtooth, sine, triangle, square, pink noise, and white noise. But if I choose a wave shape, I can then warp that. So here is warping on sawtooth. Here's warping on sine. And again, remember, not only can I turn that manually, but I can have any modulator moving that in a way that I like. Here's triangle. and square. And pink noise. And white noise. So a lot of choices for your waveforms. And when you're in the waveform engine, you can have up to 4 different pitches on that kernel, and you do this in the count mode. So right now I'm in a count of 1, but if we go to 2, now I have 2 of these, and I can set them apart by semitones. And if I max that out, I can actually have 8 kernels with 4 different pitches and create stereo spreads of that. So right now I have 4 different pitches, but with 8 kernels. And now listen as I start detuning and spreading that. And now I'll warp that. And again, I'm not running any effects, any envelopes, any filters or anything. You just start realizing the power that you have on this. So now we go to the particle engine. I can load a preset sample. I'm going to use one here called Blown. And you'll see that it's moving through that sample right here. And I could choose between different methods of moving. That's round robin. Here's ping pong. Random. And I could change its stereo width. And so you could put user samples in as well. The next engine is Resonator, and here I get to play with the harmonics and their amplitudes and move through the various harmonics. So I'm going to load a preset here. I'm going to choose one called Bottle. I'll close that. And notice that I can skew this spectrum. And I'm changing the volume relationship of each of the harmonics. Some more presets. We'll do percussive. And again, I can choose the amount of stereo on that. I have control over attack and decay of how those harmonics are played. And then a Q curve as well. And the last engine is called kernels, and it's basically FM synthesis like DX. And it's so close to DX that you can actually load DX programs into it. But unlike a DX where each of the operators or modulators can be sine waves, each of those can be any wave from the wavetables. So extraordinarily powerful. So to show you on the simple level, I just go to template and I'll choose something like FM tines. So like the standard FM piano you've heard on every DX. Once I've chosen a template, I can use these 5 knobs, either using the knobs on the side or the screen. So I'm going to change the timbre. My highs, my decay, tremolo, and the ratio, which is the ratio of the operator versus the modulator. I'll pick a different one. Here's FM brass. The important thing is that you're doing all these things in FM that would normally be a bunch of steps that you can simply do quickly from the knob. But if you want to dig in deep, you hit the editor, and now you can see the various algorithms. I'll go pick a different algorithm here that's a little more complex. I'll load in some FM tines here, and then edit. And now you can see I've got my 6 operators. They're showing which ones are modulating, which ones are audible. And I can choose for each one of those what wave shape is going into them. I've got envelopes for each, modulation for each, levels. I can do all the elbows and things for those of you really into that stuff. And so there are clearly powerful FM synthesis tools available here. And then the last thing I'll show you before I start playing is I want to show you the pads, because they can be very versatile. They can do individual notes per pad. They can do scales. They can do chords. And each of those can be set by the user and stored as a custom preset. To play these sounds today, I'm using the Numa Compact 2X by Studio Logic. This is one of my favorite synth controller keyboards because it's 88 notes with aftertouch, synth weighted, and it can be split with 2 different MIDI channels, which is perfect for a bitimbral unit like this. So obviously we've only scratched the surface on this amazing sound generation device. If you have any further questions about the Iridium or any other Waldorf instruments, please contact your Sweetwater sales engineer. My name is Daniel Fisher. Thank you very much for watching. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. For more videos like these, click here or start at Sweetwater for all your music instrument and pro audio needs.